Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, of course, thank you for tuning in. Another episode of The Spot, episode 5151. Of course, I'm one of your hosts here, Yeezy Yan, taking over, of course, until 309 discussion, of course. We'll get into it, deep dive. But for now, Season 3, Episode 8 of Power, Book 4, Force. We are definitely in the end zone here. Oh boy, so it starts out with Bobby finding his soon-to-be ex-wife, deceased at this point. Stacy finds her body at the crime scene, and he knows it was Tommy at this point because he finds a phone, picks it up that the cops didn't notice at the scene, and he calls a number on there as Paget. He just says, hey, you don't have to say anything, I know you're Tommy, I know you did it. He's gonna find him and get him. And Tommy's not too nervous, but he's just like, it's another enemy he's got to look out for. But now Diamond and Jannard got a plan essentially to make them those next moves to lock down the coalition. They got to make sure Tommy's out 100%, that he's not in it, he can't make any decisions on their behalf. No CBI, no coalition, no Tommy. And at this point, Tommy meets up with Shay, and he wants to buy more product. And I thought initially when I saw this that he was going to tell them everything about the fentanyl and stuff, but he just says, look, I want to buy more product, same volume that he would with CBI. So he's a one-man army, paying for what he would have done normally anyway with the coalition. But Shay's wondering how Tommy can make money so low, but Tommy tells him, I reinvest in myself. I don't spend my money like that. I invested back into this business. And Shay emphasizes a big thing. He basically says, I make Amazon money, not bodega money. And he was going to kill Tommy, but he was satisfied with Tommy's answer and bringing the exact amount promised that he would normally. But Shay also makes mention of the U.S. attorney getting killed, and Tommy denies it, of course. I mean, you're not going to anger Shay with guns pointed at you. You're going to let him know I had nothing to do with that. And that's a good thing. You want to deny all plausibility associated with it. But at this point, we're back to the same Princess with Miguel. They're strapping up heavy to prepare for the war against the, Marquez cartel. But Maria tries to convince Miguel that, Tommy and Miguel are on the same team. They have to work together, but Miguel denies that, even though he finds out that Tommy's no longer part of the coalition. So now he's literally a one-man army. And Jannard, he tries to make up with Shanti but fails. He fucked up big time. He smashed that hoe. He's getting back into the junk again, the heroin. He just can't do it anymore, and she's not into that. She's trying to be a one-man crew running the streets, Shanti showstopper. And at this point, we got a lot of moving pieces because we got Sang now, who's the acting U.S. attorney attempting to get Stacy's killer. And Delgado tries to say it was a cartel, but Sang has to brush it off because, again, he works for the Marquez cartel. He's under their payroll. So Bobby gives Sang the phone that he pulled from the crime scene. And while Sang is hesitant initially, he does suggest to bring in Vic because he could be a cooperating witness to this or associated. Maybe knows what's happening. But Vic finds out Tommy is solo now from Bobby, as Bobby's trying to get information on this because Bobby tells him that Tommy's running solo, and now Vic has an urge to end Tommy for good and kind of end the burden that he's had around this noose around his neck from Tommy. Just wants to be free essentially. And I mean, at that point, the next step is that Raheem, who works for Shanti, he's trying to tell Shanti like, yo, I'm trying to reinvest in your business, whatever you got going on, but also, he's a mole inside the CBI. He's telling her that, Kendra isn't messing with that fentanyl, and Shanti now kind of holds on to that information, and Raheem still stays loyal to Jannard, as a spy for Shanti, essentially. And Tommy tries to stop by his crib, but it's just surrounded by police. But even though it's a way to get him drawn out, I don't see how it's going to work because he just drove off and they couldn't catch him or see him. So it kind of makes it funny how they didn't even notice him. So Chicago's finest, I guess. But JP's house is torn up by the police, essentially trying to look for Tommy or trying to intimidate his family because Bobby, he can't have proof that's Tommy, but he does believe it is Tommy. And so why not go after family to intimidate them? And Tommy and D-Mac confirmed they're out of CBI, but JP is told that Jannard tried to have D-Mac killed and Tommy warns him not to do anything. But JP, as a dad, he's got to act. He's got to be a father figure for D-Mac, be the one to defend him, not Tommy. And that's what angers JP, that he can't do anything about it. But then the RDs meet up with Jannard at this point and tell him that, this coalition's been a mess for a while. Jannard's moving funny, and King Kilo comes out today. Jojo, his right hand from RDs, comes out, says, King Kilo's coming out today. And Jannard's trying to say, yeah, tell him I said what's up. And JoJo just like laughs it off. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So him, C4, and Gray Skull bounce, and then Raheem essentially comes in, you know, saying that leaders mess up, but they bounce back. And Raheem he sees Jannard sniffing the heroin again, but it is when, you know, when the RDs leave, so they don't know he's on that junk. But at the same time, basically Raheem's trying to keep the peace while be a mole for Shanti. So kind of works out a little bit. We'll see how that flows out. But then Marshall and D-Mac have a falling out, because D-Mac questions why Marshall ain't got his back after CBI wanted him dead. And then Marshall has to be the one in CBI to take care of himself and his mom's rent. And D-Mac's just mooching off him, essentially saying Marshall hasn't held anything down. And that's when essentially Marshall gets tossed out, or Marshall tosses D-Mac out of his place. It's like, you're not gonna come to my crib, disrespect me like that, say I'm not holding shit down. And it's a brotherhood thing. I mean, we'll see how this plays out, of course, because these are two people who have been homies since we've seen them on Force, since they've been running that trip to Gary for the Dahlia. Only time will tell now at this point. But JP, the next scene, JP drops Jannard, bro. You see Jannard initially stumbling down the steps, and then JP just runs up on Jannard and then beats him up. I'm talking beats the brakes off his face. You can't see Jannard. You can see him numbing out, like not in it 100%. Raheem has to just watch on the side, because this is something he's gonna report to Shanti for sure. But at the same time, he's not gonna like try to interfere with anything, because he maybe knows who that is, doesn't want to mess with any Tommy's family. And again, we don't know, but Jannard gets pissed off that Raheem didn't do anything, and Raheem tries to point out that he was on that stuff, so that's why Jannard got dropped easily. Jannard ain't here, and he just said, drive, let's just get the hell out of here. So then Shanti and Tommy make a deal with the Albanians, though, to move product. So now Shanti and Tommy are moving together. Then Tommy tells JP he shouldn't have beaten up Jannard when he finds out what happened. So then he does, unfortunately, Maria lets it slip that they're having a baby. So it's all good news. However, bad news can entail soon, because this is too many good things happening near the end of the season. But fast forward a little bit, and now Chan is visiting Sang in his office. You know, Sang, obviously on the Marquez payroll, is like, hey, I can make this RICO case thrown out. I'm getting Roberto Ortega released from prison tomorrow. Roberto Ortega's cousin's getting out. Everyone's going to be free. I'm taking care of everything. Chan is satisfied with this answer 100%. And now we got to see what Chan's role is, because if you recall, he did kill Merkovic with the fentanyl. Fentanyl's being pushed from Chinatown and Madame Wu's people. So Chan's got to be associated in some capacity, possibly through his race or his connections prior. We don't know. We'll see. But Kendra, the CEO at the prison in Southville, she tells Diamond that she's done with the fentanyl. She's not moving that shit, and she's back with Tommy. She's moving with Tommy and Shanti now. So the prison system's theirs. And Diamond, in a fit of rage, ain't hearing that, so he kills Kendra straight up and tells Jannard to tell King Kilo that D-Mac was the one who killed Mad Dog, and Jannard gets on it ASAP. Because now this puts a smile to Jannard's face, because now Diamond is fully locked into eliminating Tommy and eliminating him from the coalition, eliminating him as a threat and taking over everything in Chicago. And all hell is definitely about to break loose with Diamond Samson on the streets, because now we got to see how this goes out. But then Maria, oh man, Maria is confronted by Titus in the parking lot of her job, and Titus is so freaking stupid. This is the worst hitter that Ortega could have gotten, honestly, if you think about it, because essentially he pulls out a gun, she pulls out a gun out of her purse, but he doesn't kill her on sight. He just lets her pull something out, her keys or something, and then she shoots him in the leg. She gets in her car and he misses a lot of shots. Then he's facing towards her before she runs him over. It's like, come on, if you're gonna be a hitter, like, do your job. But no, he didn't do his part. She ran him over multiple times, and it's just very intense at this point, because Maria calls Tommy to the scene, and you know, where she ran over Titus. And at this point, it's one of those things where Tommy realizes he's out of options. He doesn't know what he can do. He doesn't know who he can trust. Teasing Tariq, of course, maybe, but he doesn't know who he can trust, because, you know, who can get rid of the car with the blood and the body and everything that's gone on, the gunshots, the bullets. And of course, this is something we have to figure out going forward, but Maria points out that just call Miguel. Calling Miguel is the person to do so. And when she calls Miguel, you know, they're all at the clinic treating Maria, and Miguel cleaned up the scene 100%, and Miguel knows who the hitter was. He tells Tommy about what's been going on and everything, and this is where their friendship starts to develop a little more, because now at this point they're building that credibility with each other in terms of working together. And then resuming, essentially, we basically look at how, down the road in between, essentially, oh my god, a lot of stuff happened here, essentially. So Vic, in between that Tommy goes to Maria, though, Vic pulls up on Tommy with a gun, and he takes Tommy's gun away from him, and Vic lets out his rage, telling Tommy, how pissed he is, shoots the ground, and makes him dance, on the ground, and Tommy's kind of freaking out a little bit. But Bobby and his partner arrest Vic for having guns on Tommy. But then Bobby talks to Tommy and lets him know, like, look, you can keep taunting, keep running your mouth. It's Tommy saying, like, I thought that was your ex-wife who was dead. Bobby says he's gonna make sure Tommy rots in prison instead of killing him. He wants to make sure he suffers, so we know that's gonna come back to haunt Bobby for sure. But then D-Mac tells JP he needs a spot, asking if he can crash with him, and JP says of course, father-son bonding, but of course near the end of Power Force anyway, we're gonna expect some losses here, because then Diamond rolls up on Shanti telling her he killed Kendra straight up to her face, and Shanti tells Diamond that Bernard's been playing Diamond to get back to the top of CBI. And this plants a little something in Diamond, but we'll see how that figures out going forward. But now Gennard meets up with JoJo and King Kilo at the beach, telling King Kilo he knows where D-Mac is. This was all a play by Tommy to protect him because Tommy's his uncle. And now King Kilo's pissed. He's ready to smoke Gennard, but Gennard's like, no, I can take you. I can take you to someone. I can take you to JP. That's D-Mac's dad. Oh man, and it gets even worse because on Shanti, she fixed the money drought Tommy and Miguel had to pay Shay with. So she's like, next time we go to meet Shay, I'm the one bringing the money, essentially. And Tommy says, you know what? That's a deal. And Miguel's hesitant, but Tommy confirms that that's going to happen. So next episode, we may see Shanti cross over with Shay. But then King Kilo, Gennard, and JoJo pull up on JP. This is where things get serious, because now they hold him hostage with Tommy on the phone. JP mentions Gennard's name on the phone, saying, you mad that I whooped your ass, Gennard? And that's when Tommy immediately knows who was at the scene with King Kilo. And Gennard, he's probably on that stuff in the moment, because Gennard smokes JP in a fit of rage. He shoots him 3 times, and then JP gets called him out for getting his ass whooped. So then after that, JoJo's is like, damn. After Tommy's first off, he got upset, he's down, he's devastated. JoJo's like, damn, you didn't tell us to get your ass whooped. And that's King Kilo telling him that, Diamond and Gennard have been playing King Kilo. Their RDs are out of the coalition. It's a whole mess. Gennard says fuck it. He smokes JoJo and King Kilo. And the episode ends right there. And at that moment, Gennard's a walking dead man. This man's been Dre level survival. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And of course, we're going to find out in 309 how the hell he survives, because we know he's not dying next episode. That's power for you. But let's find out. The spot, of course, episode 51. Peep us next time. Yeet.